Christian Hill. I am one of your hosts. My co-host for today is Zach Stidham. Zach, how you doing today?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good.
That's great to hear. And man, let's get started with it. It's a lot of sports we got to talk about. Kind of give you some of the topics we're going to be talking about today. ISU football. Always got to talk about it. Definitely interested there. ISU basketball is right around the corner, so we're going to talk about that as well. In the MLB, we haven't talked about the MLB in a while, but we are in the NLCS and the ALCS, so we're going to talk about how we got there, who's playing, and who do we think is going to go for that World Series championship. We got some WNBA news. That final series just wrapped up. We're going to talk about the winner, the victors, and just the overall play of the women and how the women are, in comparison, really starting to come up in the game. Then we're going to talk about the NBA because that kicks off tomorrow night, and we got some interesting takes there. And then we're going to wrap it up with the NFL in Week 6. And so let's go ahead and get started with that first topic, and that is ISU football. And so the football team played Missouri State Saturday, and we lost by a score of 7-37. I have no words.
Yeah, it was a tough game. I mean, we got shut out for 3 quarters, and then we just had to scrape one out in the last quarter.
We're 3-4, 1-3 in the conference, pretty much sitting at the bottom of the conference at this point. Playing a Missouri State team that was 3-2 going into this game, ended up finishing 4-2, and they're 3-1 in our conference. And for the Sycamores, we got a win last week, and that's the thing. We got a win. We were able to get a win last week. And this game, the offense.
It's really been the story of the year. I mean, the offense has just been inconsistent all year. But again, like you said, I mean, we put up 37 last week. You thought that we might have turned the corner, and then we just had pretty much what the season's been all year. We just had a breakdown again, and then the defense can only do so much when the offense isn't performing. So again, I don't know. I thought last week we're gonna turn the corner, but
There's so much going on. Like when you look at the team as a whole, just kind of our comparison against the Missouri State Bears, they had 442 total yards to our 261, so they almost doubled, a little less than doubled our yardage. Passing yards, we had 177 through the air. They had 252. Rushing yards is where you saw the biggest gap. Rushing yards for us, we had 84 to their 190. And so that begs the question of our offense can't produce, and our defense is pretty much getting ran through and passed through. So what are the outtakes? Like, obviously, special teams is always a bright spot for us. We normally are very well when it comes to punts, kick returns. We normally we play very well in those aspects. But when it comes down to putting offense on the board and then allowing our defense to help us out or give us cushion, we struggle. And so for Indiana State, I think this is probably a point in the season where you're like, we're probably not going to make the playoffs. Even if we do make the playoffs, we're probably not going to go very deep. And now it's just really about executing for next year, developing offensive schemes and developing offensive plays to help the team next year. Our passing leaders, we had Anthony Thompson. He had 18 completions for 177 yards. So he totaled all of our yards through the air, but he had 1 touchdown and 1 interception. On the ground, Peterson LeGrand, he averaged about 4.2 yards per carry. He had 67 yards as a total, and his gain was about 73. And it was just, it's honestly really crushing to see Indiana State lose like this. Dante Hendricks was a bright spot, though, for us as far as the receiving core with 10 catches for 121 yards and a touchdown, which was our only touchdown, unfortunately. And then our defense played fairly well. We had Michael Thomas, who came back. He had an injury last week, but he came back. He had 7 tackles. Dwayne Thompson II had 5 tackles. Played really well. And then Joffrey Brown played well again, had 5 tackles. And so for Indiana State, I think the question is, how do we develop this offense enough to help our defense out?
I mean, yeah, it's always, I mean, it's definitely a two-way street when it comes to like college football. I mean, you have to rely on both ends of the ball, and the defense really feeds off the offense when it comes to production in a lot of situations. And basically this whole year, I mean, we've been such a bad first half team. Like the first half's been just always a struggle. We just can't seem to get started when the game goes on. And other teams are flourishing against us in the first half on the offense. I mean they put up 24 in the first half, and we got shut out. But again, like just developing, I don't know. It might come back to recruiting maybe. Like we have to just go like offensive heavy recruiting class, or I think pretty much the rest of the season we got to get a lot of reps for the younger guys.
Yeah.
Like I can definitely see a lot of the younger guys, freshmen, sophomores, getting a lot of reps on the rushing and the receiving end of the ball, and I think we just gotta just see what we got moving forward. Because again, I don't see us making the playoffs, and I don't know. It would have been good to come in on a win streak for homecoming.
Yeah.
But
And that's the next point to talk about. Homecoming. Our homecoming game is this week. It's here at Memorial Stadium, and we play Youngstown State. And I'm not one to be a Debbie Downer, but I don't think we're gonna win. Youngstown State. Just looking at their last few games. September 11th, they played Michigan State and got dominated, 42-14. But obviously, that's just strength of class. That's like when we played Northwestern, right? Thank you. When we played Northwestern, and so like that's just a different level of talent that we just can't compete with right now. They played Western Illinois and lost 38-35. They played Northern Iowa and lost 34-7. That was October 2nd. And the last game they just played, they played the team we just lost to, Missouri State, and they lost to them. They beat them. They beat them 41-33. And we get dominated 37-7. So I am honestly not excited at all for this matchup because I feel we are probably going to lose our homecoming game.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really sad to say.
I mean, it's just, I mean, when you look at straight matchup, I mean, we got, like you said, we got pretty much flattened by their defense of Missouri State, and they pretty much ran through it. So, I don't know, that's not a good combo going into it, but I feel like we would have had a much better chance if we beat Western Illinois, had our most points all year 2 weeks ago, and we come in and we beat Missouri State, even if it's just by 2, like 3 or 7 or something, and then we come into this game. But I feel like because we haven't really had much of I don't think we've won 2 games in a row this year.
No, we haven't.
So if we come into homecoming, I mean, the stands are going to be packed. It's going to be the best environment we've had all year. And I feel like you come off a win streak, I feel like it's pretty much anybody's game. But again, coming off a pretty demoralizing loss last week against a team, I mean, again, Youngstown State's a pretty solid team. It's not a recipe for success in my book.
And on top of that, just looking at the schedule, Youngstown State isn't even our toughest opponent. Mm-hmm. We haven't even played that's the week after. And we go play the number 1 team in our conference, essentially, North Dakota State. And so, I hope we can pull it out. I really do. To my Sports Extra listeners out there that listen to us weekly, I did end up getting Joe that Snickers bar. It was in his office. I forgot it on Sports Extra. I forgot it at our DJ meeting. But I said that Thursday I was going to bring it. I put it in the group chat. Zach, you can confirm this.
I did.
He got that Snickers bar because we scored 37 against Western Illinois. But moving on to the other side of ISU sports, basketball season. Basketball season is upon us. The men's first game is November 4th. The women's is a little bit shortly after that. But today, and one of the reasons my co-host Joe is not on here with me, with Zach, is the basketball team is hosting the Sycamore Showcase. And they're going to be, the basketball team, both men and women, will be on full display as they show off everything that they have to offer as the new head coaches look to make their debuts. For the men, we have Josh Schwartz. And then for the women, we have Chad Killinger. And so it's looking to be a different year. We have, like I said, we have new head coaches. We have some new recruits. And hopefully for this season, I think we make a stronger push into the postseason. We didn't play very bad at all going to the postseason. When we played last year, we were actually, I believe, 4th in our conference in the MVC for the men. The women were at the bottom of the conference. It's just always been a struggle with the women. But I think that even that could turn around this year. And so I'm very excited to see what both teams will have on display. We have some returning players. We have a few guards, a few juniors, a few seniors. We have 3 seniors on the women's team, and we have a few more on the men's team. And so I'm very excited to see how many players can give us what we need, to give us that boost to take us over the edge. And I think our team this year, especially with the new head coach, is going to be a little rocky in the beginning. But now us being able to play essentially a full season, us being able to, start off our men's basketball season anyway, playing against Rose Holman here at the Holman Center. I think that's going to give us a strong indicator of how rusty they are, how well they've been prepared, especially under new head coaches, and seeing what they have to offer for us. I think last year covering it, there were ups and downs to the season, as any season should be. But the team, they bonded together well. I don't think there was any animosity between the teams. But there was just pieces that were missing. And I honestly don't know if ISU has acquired those pieces yet through recruiting, whether that would be the transfer portal. I don't know if ISU is still, collect those pieces to make the team fit, to make a deep run, even go to the tournament. And so with the basketball teams, men and women, I'm looking forward to them 100%. I think with this new coaching change and some of the talent that they brought in, I think it's going to be interesting seeing if they can start to build those pieces to be a quality contender. Because especially the men, the women, I think the women is going to take a little bit more time. But the men especially, I think they have what it takes to be quality contenders for the next couple years. Like I said, we finished 4th in the Missouri Valley Conference last year. Before COVID canceled our 2020 season, we were 4th in the Missouri Valley Conference. And that was a long time ago. I remember calling that game. That was back when we had Jordan Barnes on the team. That was back in that day. That was back in the day back then. And so Indiana State, they have some of the pieces. Do I think they have all the pieces? No. But what I think it comes down to is our ability to win on the road. We're a great home team. Our basketball teams at home are great. But on the road is where the real questions come about. And we have to realize that once we go into tournament play, we're not at home. So we have to figure out how to win on the road during the regular season, bring up that level of intensity during the postseason, and go out and win there. Because honestly, I think Indiana State, I think our team can make a bid. I think we can challenge the Loyola Chicago. I think we can get an upset on Loyola Chicago. I think we probably get an upset on Bradley. Northern Iowa is another team we probably get an upset on. Drake, I think, depending on how the tournament shakes out, that if we end up playing them, we can beat them. But if not, and that's a team we don't have to see, I think we can pull an upset against the other teams in our conference.
I mean, it'll be an interesting year for sure. I mean, new coaching staff's always it's a big bump in the road to get over because again, it's probably an entirely new playbook. It's an entirely new play scheme. I mean, and also throw in the fact that we have 7 transfer students this year, which is a big number.
Yeah.
Especially on a 15-man roster. I mean, that's almost half the roster's transfer students, which means they weren't there at all last year. So just seeing how they're gonna fit, chemistry's how they're gonna mold, or how just attitudes are gonna fit. I mean, it's gonna be interesting. I mean, I feel like our conference is kind of in a state now where the Loyola is not going to the final. I feel like they're kind of knocked down a peg a little now. They're not at the level they were the past couple of years where they're going to the Final Four. But I feel like that we could definitely turn some heads this season. I mean, who knows? I mean, if the coaches, we hired the coach for a reason. So if he has a good game plan and stuff going in, I mean, we could we could definitely get some upsets in going this year.
No, I definitely agree with you there. I think kind of where that transfer portal and that transfer students comes in is we do have a new coach, so it's an entirely new system, and so our returning players have to learn it, but our new players are fresh to it, and so they have the ability to adapt to it and be more comfortable in shifting. Where we have with our returning players, it's like I was used to doing this Coach Lansing's way, or and now I don't have that. Now I have to adjust to something different. I have to adjust to the way a coach teaches me, or a way a coach, directs and coaches, essentially. Hate to say the word coach and coaches like twice, but yeah, I think Indiana State has the potential. I think we have it in both men's and women's. I think the women's is going to be a little bit rockier. I think it's going to be a little bit of a slower upstart. But the men, I think they have it. And that's going to wrap it up for ISU sports at the moment. We're talking about the MLB, man. And the postseason has been really wild. I'm not going to say a lot to you.
Yeah, for sure.
And we're going to start, we're going to take it all the way back with the National League wildcard game. Cards versus Dodgers. And the Dodgers come out top 3-1. And so, with this game, I'm not really surprised. But the walk-off home run was pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Kelly Johnson got the win, even though he pitched one inning, obviously as their closer.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm glad the Cardinals are out, because I'm not a Cardinals fan.
Yeah,
Do I hate the Dodgers? Yes. But I'm definitely glad the Cardinals are out.
Yeah, I mean, going into the ninth, I had no idea what was going to happen, to be honest. I mean, both teams were they had their struggles on both ends. I mean, I think it was, that's not the reason, because the Cardinals ended up firing their manager in the offseason.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that wildcard game was the reason why, but there's definitely some pitching, substitutions in there that were not
questionable.
They were questionable. Gallegos was their closer all year, and he comes in the seventh. He shuts them down in the seventh, but you don't win the game in the seventh. Then you bring in your all-star Alex Reyes, but he's been shaky all year. I mean, he was 10-6. He had a 4 ERA. He's been to close. He hasn't been their closer. He's been their late relief guy. And he comes in, throws about 3 pitches, hangs a slider, game's over. So I mean, he's never pitched in the postseason. Gallegos has. And then this doesn't make much sense why you put that guy in at that point. But I mean, hindsight's 20/20 at the end of the day. But I mean, the Dodgers at the end of the day should have won that series, should have won that game. I mean, they were one of the best teams in baseball. So
constructed, both on the field, but constructed as well. Mm-hmm. The way they construct their lineups is incredible. And then moving on to the other side of the pennant, the American League wildcard game, we had the Boston Red Sox, who defeated the New York Yankees by a score of 6-2. And I'm also glad the Yankees got out, because they just have too much. You have Aaron Judge, you have Carlos Stanton, Gallo, Rizzo, they're the AL version of the Dodgers.
Yeah.
And so I'm kind of glad they got out. Not a big fan of Boston either, but I definitely would take the Red Sox over the Yankees in the postseason. And so moving on to the first game of the NLDS, we're going to talk about the Atlanta Braves and the Milwaukee Brewers. And so Atlanta goes on to win the series 3-1. The Brewers come out in game 1 and win 2-1. The Braves bounce back 3-0. They come back again in game 3, 3-0. And then game 4 was a tightly contested game, 5-4. And so the Braves are one of the teams in the NLCS, the NL Championship Series. And so what were your thoughts over this Brewers versus Braves Divisional Series?
I mean, I was a big Brewers guy.
Okay.
Going into the postseason. I felt like their pitching was just too dominant all year. But again, the question was, can they hit? And they could not. And when it came down to it, they couldn't. And the Braves, I don't know. They've been, on paper, they're not nearly as good as what they're showing right now.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, their pitchers showed up, and their hitting's been there all year. That's why they've been winning games. Their pitching's been kind of shaky, but their pitching's locked up, and their hitters they're being their hitters. I mean, you win. almost I mean, you couldn't have drew it up better. I mean, you have your franchise guy, you have Freddie Freeman. You hit a home run off the best closer in baseball, Josh Hader. I mean, you just can't draw it up better than that as a Braves fan. But I don't know. That one kind of threw me off because I just thought it was going to be like 2-0 every game. I thought the Brewers were going to squeak it out just because I thought their pitchers they had the best pitching staff in baseball.
Right.
So I just thought that was going to be too much for them to handle, but it wasn't. And then Jock Peterson was another big reason. I mean,
Jock Peterson, he's been having an amazing series, though.
I mean, he had 3 pinch hits in that series. He went 3 for 3 with 2 homers and a double. So, I mean, they got him in the trade deadline. People were kind of confused on why they got him, and this is why. I mean, there's not too many better people than him to pinch hit off righties right now. I mean, he did it for the Dodgers when they won it last year. I mean, when he comes to the postseason, he just flips.
He's a different Jock Peterson.
Yeah, he flips the switch.
He's a different Jock Peterson.
And I don't know, it's just again they're up right now. They're up 2-0 against the Dodgers.
Yeah.
So and they've had 2 walk-offs. It's turned into a Cinderella.
And Jock was a part. Jock was a major part of helping get that walk-off.
Yeah, I mean it's turned into a Cinderella story at this point. So I mean I'm rooting for him. I'd rather them than the Dodgers.
Yeah, I definitely would agree. I'm definitely rooting for the Braves. Going to the AL for the first game for that first series of the AL Divisional Series, the Houston Astros defeated the Chicago White Sox in the series 3-1. In Game 1, the Astros 6-1 against the Sox. Game 2, the Astros came out strong again, 9-4. The White Sox struck back in Game 3. Didn't want to go out quiet, 12-6. And then the Astros in Game 4 really just obliterated the Sox, 10-1. And for the White Sox pitching, I think the hitting slowed down a lot for the White Sox. And you didn't see, I don't want to say you didn't see the superstars step up, but they definitely weren't what they were in the regular season.
Oh, for sure. I mean, Luis Robert had one of the best second halves in the past decade. I mean, he hit over 400 in the second half, and he was pretty much irrelevant all series. And then Abreu did play well in the series. He did have a good series. But, like, Grandal had a good second half, didn't show up at all. Tim Anderson didn't really show up. And then the Astros just hit the ball. They
crushed the ball. They crushed it.
And they still are in the series right now. But, I mean, their offense was just electric. I mean, they scored 6, 9, 6, and 10. I mean, it's hard to beat a team when you're averaging about 8.5.
Yeah, 8.5 runs a game, yeah.
I mean, it's almost impossible.
And you're holding opponents, I mean, just looking at that divisional series, holding opponents to what?
1-4. They had 12.
6. So holding them about maybe 2 or 3 runs a game.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously you have your big splits of 4 and 6. I mean, 4 and 12, but 2 games of 1. So I'd say about 3 to 4. 3 to 4, as an average. And so Houston moves on, and so we're going to spin it back into the NL with the Giants and the Dodgers Battle of California. And this one was interesting because it went to Game 5. The Giants came out strong in Game 1, 4-0. Dodgers answered back big, 9-2. Giants blanketed them in Game 3, 1-0. Then the Dodgers came back big again in Game 4, 7-2. And then the Dodgers finished it out in a really close one, 2-1. And so for them, I think this was a great series. It's one of the better series that I've seen, where both teams counteracted each other until it came down to the final game, where the strengths, one team just ended up having to be stronger, and it was the Dodgers.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, these are the two best records in baseball. I think, I mean, this season they were the 2 best teams in baseball. And, I mean, it was just a clash of the Titans. I mean, you're just going, I mean, good pitchers on both ends, good hitters on both ends. And it just depended on, I don't know, it was really just who was hot that night. I mean, because it just went back and forth. And then just like you said, I mean, at the end, in Game 5, you got 4 games to figure out, like, what they're trying to do to beat you. So, and they both kind of
figured it out.
Yeah.
Like, it was literally a battle of, okay, I know who your pitcher is on the mound. I know what his weaknesses are. I can expose it. And it went vice versa for all 5 games until it got to the last game where it's like, it was just a battle of 2 dominant strengths, and one just had to come out on top. And so that was a great series, but the Dodgers did end up advancing into the championship series. And then last one of the ALDS, the Boston Red Sox defeated the Tampa Bay Rays by a series win of 3-1. Hurts my heart because I wanted to see Tampa Bay back in the World Series. Definitely back in the divisionals, definitely back in the championship series, but also in the World Series. Game 1, the Rays came out hot, 5-0. Then the Red Sox just had this stupid explosion, 14-6. Then they had a final that went 13 innings. Red Sox 6, Rays 4, and then in Game 4 they ended up closing it out by the Red Sox score of 6 to the Rays score of 5. And it was a battle of pitching. It was a battle of hitting, and the Red Sox just got the better of the Rays.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Rays were kind of shot themselves in the foot in the offseason.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they got rid of Morton and Snell. I mean, those were your two guys. Those were the two really big reasons why they went to the World Series last year. And then their one guy they had left was Glasnow. He goes out halfway with Tommy John.
Exactly.
So your three guys,
your big three are gone.
You don't have them, and you're relying on openers and just straight young guys and bullpen, and it just doesn't. Especially against a team like the Red Sox, who are just one of, if not the best offensive team, top to bottom in baseball right now. And they showed it. I mean, they scored at least 5. They got shut out in the first game, but they scored at least 6 and 14 and 1. I mean, their offense is so hot, and then they have the hottest hitter on the planet right now in Kike Hernandez. I mean, I think he's batting like .505 in the postseason right now. I mean, he's so incredibly hot right now. And then you still have guys like Devers, Bogarts, and all them guys like that. I mean, their lineup's just really good top to bottom, and their pitchers are just getting it done. They don't have the best pitching staff, but they have enough to get by.
Yeah, and they're doing that.
And they're doing it. I mean, if all you have to do is not give up like 5 or 6. And you know your offense is going to score like at least 6 or 7. I mean, that's easy for those guys. If you're saying go into the game and just don't give up 5 and you'll win, I mean pretty much every team can do that. Yeah. Every pitcher staff can do that. And I mean, the Astros Red Sox it's gonna be a good series. I mean, it's just they pretty much did the same thing to both the teams they played in the division series. I mean, they just overpowered them.
Yeah.
And right now they're doing the same to each other. I mean, it's split right now 1-1. And it's because their offenses are just exploded in both of those games. So I don't know. It's definitely an interesting playoffs because I thought the Rays. I mean, I've literally called every single game like prediction-wise. I've got them all wrong so far.
Wow.
I thought the Brewers were going to win. I thought the White Sox were going to win. I thought the Tampa Bay Rays were going to win. And I thought the Dodgers were going to win. But every other.
It was for sure. And so going into that, we have the championship series. Boston and Houston, the Red Sox versus the Astros. They're tied the series 1-1. And like you said, they just been going at it. Astros took game 1, 5-4. Then the Red Sox took game 2, 9-5. And so it's a battle of attritions. And then going over to the Braves and the Dodgers, the Braves have come up on top both games. They've been nail biters. I watched the game last night. It was crazy. Braves game 1, 3-2. Braves game 2, 5-4. And so, with both of these series going to 7 games, Zach, who are you taking to be in the World Series? From the NL, who are you taking? And from the AL, who are you taking?
For me right now, I think I'm going to go Houston for the AL because I think at the end of the day, their pitching is better than Boston, and their offenses are about equal. So I think because I think it's probably going to go 6 or 7 the way it looks right now. And in a 6 or 7 game series, pitching comes out on top almost every time. So the fact that they have a better pitching staff, I'm just going to give them the edge based off right now. So I'm going to go them. And for right now, it's a toss-up because they're going back to LA right now. I think if the Braves win at Game 3, they go to the World Series. If they lose Game 3, the Dodgers go to the World Series. I think this game right here decides the series as a whole. Because I think if the Dodgers win the first game at home, I think they win the second game at home. Just off pure momentum, and their Dodger Stadium is one of the toughest places to win in all of baseball. Right. Just statistically throughout the past since it's been there. And then you start going back forth. Like you go back to, and they stay at the Dodgers. They go 3 at the Dodgers.
Yeah, and then they come back for the last 2.
Yeah. So I I think Game 3 is going to decide it all right now, but I'm just gonna go with my heart. I'm gonna say Braves.
Okay.
I think momentum in baseball is one of the most powerful things you can have, and they have all of it right now. So
I'm gonna agree with you on one, and I'm gonna disagree with you on another.
Mhm.
I think the Braves do win, but I think they lose Game 3. I think they find a way to win Game 4, and they lose Game 5. So it's 3-2. They come home and end up winning. I think they find a way to sneak out Game 4 at Dodger Stadium. They lose that next game because Game 5 is at Dodger Stadium as well. So they go 1 loss, 1 win, 1 loss. Come back home for Game 6 and win it out.
I can see that.
And then I think the Red Sox beat the Astros. And I think the Astros pitching starts to decline. And I think you saw it a little bit in Game 2. And I think that trend starts to set in. And then they end up winning in Game 5. The Red Sox end up winning in Game 5 to close out the series. And so I have a Red Sox versus Braves World Series. You, on the other hand, like you said, depending on Game 3, it'll either be Dodgers versus the Astros or it'll be the Braves versus the Astros. And so that's some MLB talk for today. Moving on, just want to mention it, just want to talk about it too. WNBA, the ladies, the Lady Hoopers. The Chicago Sky got their first WNBA championship, man. I'm super excited. Shout out to my girl Candace Parker, got her first championship. Shout out to my girl Dana Evans from Gary, Indiana, got her first championship. The Chicago Sky passed on her in the draft, picked her up in the season, and she's the first rookie to get her WNBA championship. I'm hyped. And they MVP, Kalea Cooper, was balling out of control. She had 20 points when the Phoenix Mercury had 24 points in the second quarter. That's how she was balling out. And it was crazy to watch because I thought it was gonna be a super close contest. And the Sky dominated in Game 1. Game 2 was a little bit closer. And then the Sky dominated in Game 3 to come out with the victory. And I loved every minute of it. I loved every minute of watching the game. I mean, just from start to finish, just everything. Shout out to the Phoenix Mercury, though, because they have the voted GOAT of the WNBA, Diana Taurasi. Brittany Griner had a great series. She didn't play too bad. Skylar Diggins was another one that had a great series. But the Chicago Sky pulled it out. They pulled it out. And it was exciting to see them win 3-1. 3-1, man. Shout out to the Sky.
I mean, it's good to see, like, kind of just women's basketball growing by the year. I mean, because those women deserve it. I mean, they grind just as hard as the guys. I mean, they're out there every day. They're doing the same things. I mean, it's showing. I mean, you can tell, like, just the development over the past probably decade of just female basketball players have just been just exponential. I mean, you got, like, Teresa and Brittany Griner are two of the best players to ever play, and they're on the Mercury. And then Candace Parker, again, is another one of the best players to ever play. She's Chicago native, playing on Chicago Sky. I mean,
exactly.
It's a storyline victory.
What kind of homecoming could be sweeter?
Yeah.
And so, shout out to the WNBA. Definitely ready for next season of the WNBA. Ready for next season, which is going to get kicked off, of women's basketball here on a collegiate level. And, man, shout out to the women because they balling just as well as the men. Like, their series are just as exciting, just as interesting. And now we're going to move on to the men. The NBA kicks off tomorrow. We have the Warriors versus the Lakers and the Nets versus the Bucks. So we have one. I would say if Klay Thompson comes back healthy, and I'll give it maybe a year, maybe 2 years. Me and Joe have talked about this extensively. If the Warriors come back healthy, I'm talking about that core five, so Steph, Klay, Andrew Wiggins, Draymond, James Wiseman.
It's a good team, man.
Western Conference Finals, maybe Finals champions. I see it.
I mean, I can definitely see it.
I see it, right? Then they play the Lakers, the old head Lakers. You got LeBron, Carmelo, Dwight, DeAndre Jordan, Westbrook, Trevor Ariza, just the old heads, you know, just the oldies. And then you have that Eastern Conference Finals rematch for the opening night without Kyrie, which is going to be interesting to see. I don't know how they're going to get along with that. But I'm excited for it. And, you know, I seen this on Instagram earlier today. I want to bring it up. So, essentially, we have the Warriors, who are the second most valuable team in the NBA, playing the third most valuable team in the NBA, the Lakers. The Warriors are priced at $5.6 billion. The Lakers are priced at $5.5 billion. And then we have the Brooklyn Nets, who are the seventh most valuable NBA team at $3.2 billion, playing a team that's not on the list for value, not in the top 10 at least, the Bucks. You know, Milwaukee being a little bit of a smaller town market. Giannis, Finals MVP, back with Drew Holiday and Chris Middleton looking to run it back. Kevin Durant and James Harden having something to say about that. And so, Zach, who are you taking? Give me some of your thoughts. Give me some reasoning. Talk to me.
I mean, I personally want for the Warriors-Lakers, I want the Warriors to win. Personally.
Okay.
Because it's nothing against the Lakers. I like a lot of players on the Lakers. I'm a big Westbrook guy. Always have been.
Wow.
I'm
sorry. I'm sorry.
I love his mentality.
Okay.
His tenacity. I mean, you can tell like his just love for the game is just. I mean, he's so contagious when he plays with people and stuff. It's crazy. And he's just stat stuffer. I mean, I love guys like that. He's scrappy. I've always loved Westbrook. And then Bron, obviously, one of them.
For sure.
I mean, AD. I'm a Kentucky fan, UK fan.
Loved
AD.
Get him out of here.
Yeah, loved AD.
It's the Duke boys over here.
Yeah,
the Duke boys over here.
Yeah, loved AD since he's been at UK, and also, I mean, I'm so curious to see how that team's gonna play together.
Mm-hmm.
That Lakers team. Because in the preseason, I mean, you can never take anything in the preseason, like serious.
But Bron did have 30 in the last preseason game.
Yeah,
30. What do you have? 36 and 6.
Yeah, I think.
Yep.
But I mean, the preseason, there's a lot of things going on. There's a lot of players trying to just get shifted to new teams and like rookies and stuff playing. But they look kind of rocky, and I think the Warriors. I think they're going to be one of the more fun teams to watch in the league this year. I mean, you got Curry, who had, I think, one of the best seasons of a player to never win an MVP, like ever. I think. I mean, his last season was phenomenal. He had one of the best seasons statistically of all time, and he's only getting better. I mean, he's one of the best players of all time, in my opinion. And then you still have like guys like Draymond, Wiggins is coming back, and I don't know. I think the safe bet's the Lakers to win.
Okay.
Because they just have more talent on the floor.
Right.
But I think it's definitely going to be a high scoring for sure. I mean, neither of these teams are like defensive oriented, so it'll probably be at least 110s, probably 120s apiece. And then I think the Nets Bucks is going to be. I think it's going to be dominance by the Bucks. I truly think that because I think the Nets have just been so absorbed in media all off season, like with the whole Kyrie situation and all this other stuff. And they still have good pieces. I think Patty Mills is one of the most underrated signings of the offseason.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's a 6 Man of the Year candidate for sure. I think he's going to be a good leader of the second unit. And I just think the Bucks. They just won the title. They have virtually the same team coming back. They've had all summer to just train together, get better with the same guys, and I think those guys have gotten better. I think Middleton's going to step up more than he did. I think Drew Holiday is going to ascend this year. I think he's going to be one of the more. This is the year he's going to be an all-star.
Okay.
And their bench is pretty deep as well. They got guys like DiVincenzo, just people like that. I'm just curious how the Nets are going to play. They're kind of like the Lakers in the fact that they're kind of older. They got guys like Griffin.
I think they're the second oldest team in the NBA.
Yeah, Millsap, Aldridge.
Lakers are first, Nets are second.
And it's just scary. The Nets could easily win this game, and I wouldn't be surprised at all. They have Durant, Harden, all those guys. But I feel like the Bucks are just they're just more like they're just settled more right now.
Yeah.
Like they're coming off. They didn't really have any signings in the offseason. They just know who they have. They know how to play with it. I feel like that's just going to show in the first game of the season.
Okay. Now I'm definitely going to have to say that the analogies, the comparisons, expert. I loved it. I'm going to go with the Nets. I think Kevin Durant has something to prove, especially in the fact that he was this close.
He was a toenail, yeah.
He was this close to sending the Bucks home in the Eastern Conference Finals. And so I think the Nets come out with something to prove. I think James Harden has something to prove in the fact that he was hurt during that Eastern Conference Finals and couldn't really be because you can't really call him a secondary. Like, you can't really call James Harden a sidekick to Kevin Durant. Like, you really can't.
You can't. It's 1A, 1B.
You know, it's like 1A, 1B. And so, like, I think he has something to prove in the fact that he was hurt, so he really couldn't put on display the type of game that he needed to carry, like, to take that load off of Kevin Durant. And so, because essentially you have two players that could give you 80 points, 40 points apiece for both of them.
100%.
And then with the Lakers, I think the Lakers are going to come out and win this game against the Warriors, just for the fact that Klay Thompson is missing still. Andrew Wiggins, essentially just got the vaccine, so now he's back in contention to practice and play at home games and everything like that. And so I think the Lakers have had a little bit more time to build and mesh and everything like that. One thing I think is going to be interesting in this first game is Russell Westbrook. And I say that because he struggled heavily in the preseason.
100%.
And obviously it's the preseason, but as my coach used to say, you practice how you play. In the preseason is not necessarily a glance, but it's a glance at maybe the first week and a half of NBA action, right? Everything after that, you take it as its own whole, its own entity, its whole accord. But that first week and a half of NBA action, you see a lot of things based off the preseason. And so that's why I'm going to take the Lakers. I think Bron is able to overcome the struggles of Westbrook. I think AD is going to flourish. As long as AD stays healthy, I think he's going to flourish and have another all-star season. But that's who I'm taking. I'm taking the Nets, and I'm taking the Lakers as my two teams. And now we back into the NFL action. Got about 15 minutes or so, so we're going to take a deep dive. First game I want to talk about is Seahawks versus the Steelers. Where one, you have the Steelers with Ben Roethlisberger, who was 29 of 40 for 229 yards and a touchdown. And you had a man that we really haven't heard much of, been a backup in the league for quite a while now, but Geno Smith. He was 23 of 32 for 209 yards and a touchdown. And so Geno Smith didn't play bad at all. He played surprisingly well. But Ben Roethlisberger was able to get the win in OT. And that brings up the question of what's going on with Pittsburgh. They struggled against a Russell Wilson-less Seahawks. Because I think if the Seahawks had Russell Wilson, the Steelers lose this game, and they're 2-3 on the season.
I mean, I just think, Roethlisberger was kind of on the decline last year,
Right.
but like nobody really talked about it as much. But now it's just so
It's apparent.
It's so visible that you just can't miss it. I mean, he's not bottom end, like bottom 5% of the league, but he's like bottom 15, I think, in my opinion. I mean,
He's not top 15.
He's not top nothing right now, and it's just so apparent. I mean, they're relying so much on their run. I mean, Najee Harris got 24 carries,
81 yards.
Yeah, last night, and again, it hurts so much. I mean, Juju went down last week after the season, which hurts him so much because he was one of the primary receivers, and I don't know, man. I mean, their defense is just having to do so much because they have one of the better defense in the league, and that's the only reason they won the game last night, in my opinion. Because I mean, you have Geno, who hasn't played like substantial NFL play in years, and I mean they relied so much on the run game, which is something they don't do very often.
No.
And because Alex Collins got 20 carries last night, which for 100 yards, I mean, he had a good game, but they rely so much on the rushing of Russell Wilson more so than running, and just his arm throwing a DK, throwing a Tyler Lockett, and I just think that was so apparent. And the defense, and if you're trying to run heavy on Pittsburgh, it's just not going to work. I mean,
Right.
They have one of the best D-lines in football, and I just think that's the only reason they won their game was their D-line last
I
year.
agree.
And
The defense saved the offense.
Yeah.
I mean, it essentially did.
pretty much.
Um,
And I just think going forward that, I mean,
Ben Roethlisberger is going to get replaced.
and he has to, or they're just gonna keep losing. So.
And honestly, I don't see any of the people they picked up. So Mason Rudolph and Dwayne Haskins are not the replacements. So, I don't know how they're going to figure out how to get somebody in the draft. That I mean, it's going to have to be through trade assets or something. They're going to have to give up somebody. Maybe they trade Juju, but they're gonna have to do something to get the next quarterback of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Because Ben Roethlisberger is not it. Like he's squeaking out wins. That's what I like to say. Like the Pittsburgh Steelers are squeaking out wins. And so moving on to the next game, the Dallas Cowboys, 5-1, America's team.
How about the Cowboys?
How about them Cowboys versus the New England Patriots, 35-29. Dallas almost lost this game. Mac Jones almost had another immaculate, almost like this far from beating another team that's considered
that they shouldn't.
That's considered, top tier at the moment in NFL football. But they didn't. And Dak Prescott got it done, but he ended up getting hurt. And so he had to get an MRI this morning to get a look at his leg. But just looking at some of the stats, Dak Prescott threw 51 times, and that's a lot. He was 36-51 for 445 yards, 3 touchdowns, and an interception. Mac Jones, on the other hand, 15-21, 229 yards, 2 tutties, and an interception. A 52 QBR for Dak Prescott, to a 46 for Mac Jones. But the run game was interesting. Zeke had 17 carries for 69 yards, while Damian Harris had 18 carries for 101 yards and a touchdown. I think Zeke is falling out of the upper echelon of running backs in the league.
I wouldn't go as far as to say that. I would just say that, I mean, if you look down, he had 7 receptions for 50 yards. I think they're trying, because that's what he did at Ohio State. He kind of they're trying to get him to shift more of like a McCaffrey type role. They want him to get more in the passing game because, I mean, when he catches the ball, he's a natural born playmaker.
Right.
With his feet, he's got power, and they're trying to get, because if you add him in with like Cooper and CeeDee Lamb, I mean, it's just
that's another thing.
Yeah.
Looking at this wide receiving core, CeeDee Lamb is having an amazing season.
Yeah.
He had 9 receptions for 149 yards and 2 touchdowns today. Amari Cooper has kind of taken a back seat. Only 5 receptions, 55 yards. Dawson Schultz had 5 receptions for 79 yards. But Mac Jones, he was spreading the ball efficiently as well. Kendrick Bourne, 1 reception for 75 yards. Big play and a touchdown. That big play touchdown. Jacoby Myers, 5 receptions for 44 yards. And so, my boy Mac Jones, Mac and Cheese, as some people like to call him. Mac and Cheese was spreading the ball efficiently. I like the play calling from New England. Dallas snuck away with it. But I think the biggest name on the Dallas Cowboys is not on offense. It's on the defense. Trayvon Diggs. 5 tackles, 5 solos, and a touchdown off a pick.
7th one of the season.
7th one of the season.
6 games.
But I seen something on Instagram today, and it was like Trayvon Diggs is the Jameis Winston of the defense. And I thought to myself, why would anybody say anything like that?
Yeah,
And then I started to look at some of, why they said that and everything. And I still don't understand it because this is only his 2nd year in the league. And while he does allow a lot of yards, it's only his 2nd year in the league. He's not, Trayvon Diggs is not. This isn't like his 8th year, and he allows like 2,000 yards against him. Like with this being his 2nd year in the league. If it was that, like it was his 7th year, and he's had multiple consecutive seasons of allowing 2,000 plus yards in the league. Okay, maybe maybe he He's led the league in interceptions a few times, but has consistently allowed big yardage against him. But he hasn't done that this year. He's guarded every number one, and he's accumulated 7 interceptions through 6 games. And so the Dallas Cowboys are clicking. An injury to Dak Prescott will probably be the destruction of their team. I mean, honestly,
100%.
if Dak Prescott gets hurt, their team is done for.
It'd be just like last season again.
Yeah.
I mean, he's the heart and soul of their franchise right now. I mean, he's evolved into, in my opinion, one of the best quarterbacks in the league.
I think he's borderline top 5.
I think he's definitely an S tier, like elite tier quarterback now. And I'm glad that Dallas saw that and he actually got the money that he deserves. Because I mean, he deserves it. I mean, he's one of the best in the league right now. So
I definitely agree with that. And moving on to somebody who may not be borderline anymore, we have the Cardinals versus the Browns. And Baker Mayfield, he didn't play a bad game.
No.
But are we going to put Baker Mayfield in this elite category? I don't think we can.
No.
He went 19 of 28 for 234 yards, 2 touchdowns and an interception. While on the other hand, his OSU brother, OSU Heisman Trophy winner, 20 of 30, 229 yards, and 4 touchdowns. The guy's just different. Like, Kyler Murray is the MVP favorite. There's nobody else that's winning this race right now.
It's not close.
Besides Kyler Murray.
No, it's not close.
And another thing, just looking at it, the Browns' defense. Defense was a liability for the Browns. They went out and got the pieces to, try to fix that a little bit. But it's still a liability. They struggled. Who was that against? It was against the Vikings that they only put up, say, 7. Barely beat the Bears. And it's just.
And they give up 47 to the Chargers.
It's a weird balance for the Browns. But on the other hand, Arizona, they've been flourishing. The only undefeated team in the NFL, 6-0. Like, they have done it all. They've been playing amazing. Kyler Murray does what he needs to do. The ball is spread out both on the run and in the pass game. James Conner has 16 carries for 71 yards. Then you have in the receiving core, A.J. Green with 5 receptions for 79 yards. Christian Kirk with 5 receptions for 75 yards. Hop had 3 receptions for 55 yards, but he had 2 touchdowns on the game. And Kyler Murray's not just doing it to one wide receiver. He's giving it to all of them. A.J. Green's getting touches. Christian Kirk's getting touches. DeAndre Hopkins is getting touches. Rondale Moore is getting touches. All his wide receiver core is getting touches. And another thing we talk about, and I was watching it this morning, Arizona was without their best defensive player. And the Browns still struggle. So there's some issues in Cleveland that need to be, there's some things that need to be worked out, some kinks that need to be ironed out for that Cleveland team. And so, moving on, the Jags get their first win. Trevor Lawrence gets his first win in the NFL against the Dolphins, I wouldn't even call it a rivalry anymore because it's kind of died down now, but like the Clemson versus Bama rivalry that was going on for a few years, a Clemson quarterback came out on top against an Alabama quarterback. And there's nothing much to this game, but the Dolphins need to rethink some things.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it was just a crapshoot. I mean, both these teams were. I mean, I think right now this is the 2 worst.
They are.
They're the 2 worst teams in football.
They
in my
are.
opinion. And it came down to just the last second on a field goal, and I don't know. I mean, there wasn't much, like you said, there wasn't much to it. It was just like kind of back and forth. There wasn't like too many like big highlight plays or anything.
Mm-hmm.
It was just like one team scores. I mean, the scoring breakdown, it was like Miami's had 7-6, 0-7, and Jacksonville had 3-7, 7-6. So it wasn't like there was like big play after big play.
Right.
It was just like consistent, like just
one score,
methodical drives after methodical drive, and they just kind of snuck it in every time. I mean, I think every touchdown this game was in the red zone, so there wasn't really a big play at all, and it pretty much just came down to who had the ball last, and it turned out to be Jacksonville, and they just sneaked in a field goal.
Yeah.
So.
And so next game, kind of chopping through the rest of these games, the Chiefs versus Washington. The Chiefs did end up winning. They end up winning big. But Kansas City has come down from that high horse that they used to sit on. We talked about this last week. And they don't look like the same football team. Like, Patrick Mahomes doesn't look like the Patrick Mahomes of old. Like, I think we're starting to realize, like, we're not gawking about Patrick Mahomes like we used to. Like when Patrick Mahomes did the no-look pass, oh my God. Or when he did the shovel pass, like, that's not happening anymore. He finished 32 of 47 for 397 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. And I think Patrick Mahomes has to realize now, like, decision-making has to be a little bit better. And I think we're starting to see that flaw as defenses have figured out the Kansas City Chiefs. They're not allowing the big plays as much as they used to. Like Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce, they're more prone to drop balls now, which is interesting.
Yeah, one of his picks was just straight up Tyreek Hill's
ball.
ball.
Like, through his hands.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, I don't know, it just comes out, I mean, Patrick Mahomes, I mean, they still don't have an offensive line. That was the reason they lost the Super Bowl last year.
Yeah.
And they got a couple pieces in the offseason and, like, through the draft, but not nearly enough. He's having to come out of the pocket virtually every single snap, and he's having to scramble and do shovel passes and sidearm passes and everything else, or he's going to get sacked every single play. I mean, I think they said, like, he has the lowest average time in the pocket of any player in the league right now. And
it shows.
It shows. I mean, he's having to scramble and come out of the pocket every time, and he's having to make a big play, or it's nothing pretty much.
Right.
And that doesn't work. This doesn't work in the NFL at all. And I don't know. I mean, he still had 400 yards, but again, that's just all off big plays. I mean, he's averaging 8 yards a throw. So in this game, it's just, I don't know. It's hard to win like that, as it's showing. I mean, they're 3-3. And then their defense had a better game this year, but it was against a bad Washington football team offense. So you can't, like, really take much from that.
Exactly, especially playing against Tyler Heineke. No disrespect to Tyler Heineke, but, like,
yeah, at the end of the day, it's not like Aaron Rodgers or anything.
Right, you're not facing the elite talent, the S tier talent.
Yeah, and it's just, and their defense is still, in my opinion, just as bad. I mean, it's just hard to win. I mean, I think this team, like you said, is just not on the high horse it used to be.
Yeah.
And they have to make some pretty significant changes, or they're just gonna. I mean,
their team's going to fade out. They're going to be that one championship team.
Mm-hmm.
Not to say that, like, they weren't a powerhouse or a dynasty or anything like that, but they were that team that got that one championship because they had all the right pieces in that 1 year, and they couldn't do it again.
Yes.
And so, moving on to these last couple games. The Chargers versus the Ravens. People were dumping him too early. I felt it because he was on my fantasy team, and I was mad because he was on my bench. But I still ended up getting a dub. Justin Herbert came down to earth. Chargers versus Ravens. A big blowout. Lamar Jackson had a pretty solid game. Score of 34-6. Herbert was 22 of 39 for 195 yards and 1 touchdown. Lamar Jackson, on the other hand, like I said, didn't have a really great game, but had an okay game. You know, he came back down to earth as well. 167 yards for 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions. A 18.5 QBR for Herbert and a 61.8 for Lamar Jackson. So not great quarterback play on either side of the ball. But this was just a game to show that, like, even the greatest players or even the best players are human too.
Yeah. Especially like Lamar Jackson. I mean, he's coming off two of, like, the best games, like, of the past, like, 4 or 5 years. I mean, the last game he had against the Colts was one of the best games.
Yeah, crazy.
It was one of the best games the quarterbacks had in a few years.
Oliver counted for what? Almost 500 yards total yards for offense.
Yeah, I mean, and coming into this week, he had more combined yards than 18 other NFL teams. Just himself had more rushing and passing yards than 18 other NFL teams. So, I mean, it's just kind of, again, like you said, I mean, it just showed that he was human.
Yeah.
But he still didn't even have a bad game. He still led him to a blowout win.
I definitely agree. And so, last thing before we get off air here, Bills and Titans tonight. I think Josh Allen is so far the runner-up in MVP in the MVP voting.
100%.
And so you have Derrick Henry, who may, ultimately gain another title as NFL rushing leader for a season. And so who we taking? Bills or Titans?
I mean, I think it's cookie cutter to me. I think it's just the Bills. I mean, I think the Bills have the best offense and the best defense in the league right now, statistically.
Mm-hmm.
And they're virtually unbeatable right now.
Well, Zach, I'm glad we agree on that one. And that's going to be it for Sports Extra today. I'm Christian Hill. I had Zach Stidham with me. Thank you all for listening. Tune into us every Monday at 6 o'clock for Sports Extra. We love you. Stay blessed. And get ready for all the actions going on. We got a lot of sports going on. MLB, NBA is kicking off tomorrow. NCAA basketball is starting back up soon. And we got the NFL as well, plus college football. So sports. We love them over here at WZIS. And we got a lot of great content. So stay tuned. Follow us on all our social medias and Twitch. Thank you all. Stay blessed. You're listening to Sports Extra and WZIS C90.7. Great stuff, Zach. Great stuff.